Hi everybody, welcome to week 2 of summer school. This is Monday, and for your lesson today, you're going to be reading this paper here, The Colored Orphans Asylum of New York, and answering some questions on the back. Why are we reading this? Well, we're reading this because we need some background information for this book here, which we're going to start tomorrow, called The Dactyl Hill Squad. I hope you got a chance to look at that video about the author. It's really cool. I sent you the link in your phones. Anyways, we're going to read this together, and it takes place in 1863. That's a long time ago. That makes this historical fiction. It's also fantasy, though, because there's dinosaurs in it. And dinosaurs were not ever around when people were around. They're from 100 million years ago, and people didn't start till 7 million years ago, so it's impossible. So it's a combination, historical, fiction, and fantasy. It's a mashup. Anyways, because it takes place in 1863, there was a lot of really important things happening then that the author puts in the book. And I want to tell you about those. It'll make it a lot easier to follow the book that way. I have a few things to share with you. The first thing you need to know is in the 1860s, there was a big conflict in the United States. This part of the country wasn't really states yet, so they didn't get into this too much. But this part of the country, you can see, is divided into two parts, the blue part and the red part. And that was because the northern states had gotten rid of slavery. It's called abolished slavery. So all the black people that lived up here were free black people. So in New York, the black people were free, and that's where our story takes place, New York City. There were a lot of free black people in New York City at that time, although that didn't necessarily mean they were treated fairly. There was some racism against them, and you'll see that in the book, but they weren't slaves. And at that same time, down here, all the black people were slaves. And so a big war broke out about this issue. It was called the Civil War. You've probably heard of it. And that was between the southern states that wanted to keep slavery and the northern states that wanted to get rid of it. And they also wanted the southern states to be joined back up with the northern states. The southern states basically seceded, which means they left the country. They decided they were their own country. And then there was a fight to get the country back together and to get rid of slavery. And you'll see things in the book about that all along. One of the characters is a black person, a black orphan actually, the main character's brother in New York, and he decides to join the Union, which is the Northern Army, to fight the war and try to free the slaves. A lot of black people did join the Union Army to try to get rid of slavery. And other things like that will be in the book. All right, so that's what was going on then. Also, if you get a chance, please follow the link to this video, which is about the Colored Orphan Asylum, which is also what our reading is about. And that'll give you some more information about it. All right, so let's look at our worksheet. Here it is. Okay, the Colored Orphans Asylum of New York. Colored back then was the word they used for black people and brown people. Orphans are people that don't have parents, but a lot of the kids that were there because their parents just couldn't take care of them, or other reasons too. But basically, it means your parents are out of the picture and you have nowhere to go. You're homeless. And an asylum is a safe place. So some people started this asylum, which was also kind of like a school, to take care of them, and the kids lived there all the time so that they would be safe. And it was all colored people, because back then they always kept the white people and the colored people separate. All right, so a big trick about reading these kinds of things is, I want you to do this all the time in summer school, read the questions first. It will make your life easier. Then you'll know what you're looking for when you read the selection. Also at the bottom here are some, this is on the back side of your paper, are some vocabulary words to help you. Racial unrest. You know what race is. Well, not a race that you run, but race like color of your skin. Which you know is unfair to judge people by the color of their skin. But it is a thing. It's a problem. And racial unrest means when people are upset and fighting about issues of race, which is happening today with Black Lives Matter. And it certainly happened back then in 1863. People were having fights about it. Asylum is a place of protection and shelter. Draft law is a law that says you have to join the armed forces in times of war. You don't just volunteer, you have to. We don't have a draft now. People join the army because they want to. But sometimes during war, the government starts something called a draft where you have to go. And a lot of people don't like that. And a matron is a woman in charge of a boarding school or an asylum or other establishment. So here's our questions. What caused many black families in New York to be, quote, broken? What caused that? Who was Dr. James McCune Smith? How many children were housed at the asylum in the mid-1800s? That should be an easy one to find. Why were people rioting in New York in 1863? That's going to be in our book. So I want you to figure that out. And what happened to the Colored Orphans Asylum during the riots? So your job today is to read this. It's not very long. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. You can do that and answer those questions. Now, after you've answered the questions, I want you to take a picture of it and send it to me. And this week, I'm keeping track of all the assignments you send in to me. And on Thursday, if you do a good job, send me all your assignments on your phone, then you will get a treat. I'll send you something fun. I don't know what yet. I got to look at the store and see what I can get. Text me with ideas. What kind of candy do you like? Chips, something like that. All right, something to reward you for doing your work. Okay, if you have any questions, be sure to email me or text me. Most of you are texting me. And then tomorrow when you get your packets, this book is going to be in there. And there'll be a video of me reading the book. So what I want you to do is follow along in the book as I'm reading it. And there'll also be a paper that you fill out questions for. We'll read the questions first. All right, and we'll read this book together starting tomorrow. Fun, fun. All righty, see you next time. Bye.